Hello and welcome to or welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, thank you so much for stopping by, and as always, if you are a recurring viewer or a subscriber, thank you so much for your continued support of my channel. I really appreciate you all being here today. I wanted to do just my standard weekend reading update today. I have had a pretty good reading week. I was able to finish 5 books this week, which is a lot more than I have been able to do in the weeks past. So I actually have a few more books to talk about than usual, which I'm excited about. The first book that I finished last week was Elizabeth Norton's The Temptation of Elizabeth Tudor. And this is one that I did show in last week's update. I had just started it last weekend, and I finished it. It was either Monday night or Tuesday morning, so fairly close to the start of the week. And I really enjoyed this one. My knowledge base of Elizabeth I is very, very basic. I don't know very much about her or her reign at all, which is part of the reason for wanting to read this book, and then hoping to go into a couple other biographies that I have on my TBR for Elizabeth I, just because I find her really fascinating. But this book primarily focuses on Elizabeth's sort of formative years in power, and sort of the time that she spent in the cultivation of her sort of royal image, or the way that she portrayed herself to court and out to the world as queen. And then it also focuses a lot on her sort of early on relationship with Thomas Seymour, the one man that was closer than any to becoming the husband of Queen Elizabeth. So it was really very engrossing, very educational. Elizabeth Norton's writing style is excellent. This is only the second book by her that I have read, the first being The Hidden Lives of Tudor Women, which I talked about last week, which was a fascinating book. And so her writing style is very readable, and she pulls you in. It's not dry in the least. And this also isn't very long. I think it's either right around 200 pages or right around 300 pages. So it's not very long. It only took me a couple of days to read it, not really even sort of pushing myself in the reading, just with my naturally a little bit slower reading speed. I got through it in just a couple of days just because it's that good. So I would definitely recommend this one if you are a fan of the Tudor period, if you want to know more about Elizabeth I. This is not, I should have mentioned, this is not a cradle-to-grave biography of Elizabeth I. However, it is just sort of focusing on those formative years of her reign. It starts with her when she's just a princess before she becomes queen, and then it just goes through a little bit of her time on the throne. So it's not a complete biography. I think it would be excellent to read sort of in tandem with another biography, which is what I'm planning on doing. Having read this, I'm now going to hopefully maybe even today start a full biography of Queen Elizabeth I. I'm planning on going to the library this afternoon to see what I can find in sort of in that way of biographies of Elizabeth I. But this was excellent. I really enjoyed it. Then the next book that I finished was How to Be a Tutor. There is definitely a common theme of last week's reading. I was doing a lot of sort of Tudor period stuff. How to Be a Tutor, A Dawn to Dusk Guide to Tudor Life by Ruth Goodman. This one I actually listened to on audiobook, so I didn't read it on Kindle. This is just a sample that I downloaded to be able to have a cover for you instead of trying to, in editing, throwing something up on the screen here. But this was an absolutely fantastic listen, and it's definitely one that I'm going to be getting in physical book copy because I want to go back in and make some notations of some certain passages. But the main thing, or the biggest thing, I guess I should say, that I loved about this book was the formatting of it being a dawn to dusk guide, as sort of the tagline says. It was organized basically where each chapter is a different period of or not a period, a different time of the day. So the first chapter is waking up and sort of the morning chores and the morning jobs of the time, and then it went through to sort of the morning's work and lunch and the afternoon and dinner and sort of the festivities at night, and then getting ready and going to bed. So sort of a full 24-hour period a full day's cycle essentially in Tudor England, very much focusing on the average person. So this isn't really focusing on royalty. This isn't really focusing on the aristocracy or on sort of the gentry or the wealthy, but very much the run-of-the-mill, day-to-day farmers and merchants and workmen, their lives and their families. And it was just super fun and really very educational for me. I know very little about this time period, but Ruth Goodman's writing is just so enthusiastic, and she herself as a historian is so enthusiastic for the Tudor time period that it's infectious the way it comes through in her writing, and in my case through the narrator's reading of her book. So it was just an absolute pleasure to read and so fun. So I would definitely recommend, if you are a fan of the Tudor period, or if you're like me and you're just wanting to learn more about the period, I would absolutely recommend you get a copy of How to Be a Tutor by Ruth Goodman. It is just so much fun, as well as being incredibly informative and educational. Then the next book that I read, and I'm going to try to pull it up here as well for the cover, is here. Let me see if I can get this pulled up. Might not want to load. I think I'm on the. I think I need to do it over here on the Paperwhite. The other book that I finished was the Penguin Monarchs series for Queen Victoria, titled, where'd it go? Here it is. Titled Victoria, Queen, Matriarch, and Empress by Jane Ridley. And I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get the cover or not to show. Let's see. Yes. Victoria by Jane Ridley. This is a part of the Penguin Monarchs series. So this is a very short biography of Queen Victoria. I think it was 128 pages or something like that. So I read it in just an afternoon. It's an excellent sort of excerpt, or not an excerpt because it covers her entire life. It's a wonderful sort of summation of her life and reign. Very, very brief on every aspect of her life, obviously, to keep it in such a small form factor. But I found it really, really good for being sort of a flash summary of Queen Victoria's life. I really enjoyed it. I would definitely recommend this to anyone who is wanting to maybe start into reading about Queen Victoria, because the writing is very accessible. It's not super detailed. It's not super overwhelming with names and dates and places and whatnot. It really just delivers the sort of the tightest form factor of Queen Victoria's life and reign in a very enjoyable, very, very fast-paced, easily readable form. So I would definitely recommend this. Then I moved on to another Tudor time period piece, Dan Jones's The Wars of the Roses. This is a book that I have had sitting on my bookshelf for, I think, 4, maybe even 4.5, 5 years at this point, and had never read, and honestly sort of forgot that I owned it. And then when I was looking through books to read on sort of the general history of the Tudor period, particularly the House of Tudor's rise to power, I kept seeing this title popping up places, and I kept thinking, I think I have this. And then I went and looked on my shelves, and yep, I do have it. So I finally read this, and it was fantastic. I am a big fan of Dan Jones. His book, The Plantagenets, and then The Essex Dogs are the only 2 books by him that I have read. I know he has a whole lot of other titles, so I'm excited to get to his other works. But The Wars of the Roses it's a fantastic read. Dan Jones's style, he writes history, but it comes across on the pages as fiction. And I think it's just the way that he delivers his histories and the way that he organizes his books and structures his writing. It's very action-packed while also being informative. And so it's entertaining as well as informative. It plays both of those roles really well. And this goes through, it starts a little bit with sort of the tail end of the Plantagenet kings and the House of Plantagenet, and then it rolls over into Henry VII, Henry Tudor, and sort of his overthrow of the House of Plantagenet and the rise of power of the House of Tudor. So it's incredibly action-packed. I really enjoyed it. I did pair this one with the audiobook as well. So I listened to, I think it was about 20% was me listening, and then the rest of it was me physically reading the book itself. So I didn't listen for the entire thing. It's just because I started it on a Friday, so I was working. So audiobooks suit work days better for me than having the physical copy. And then yesterday I was able to sit down and finish the rest of the book on Saturday afternoon, which was wonderful. And so I would definitely recommend this one. I would also go ahead and recommend the Plantagenets as well. Dan Jones says in the introduction to this book that he isn't intending this to be a part 2 to the Plantagenets, but he does hope that readers will read them in tandem. And I would absolutely second that as well, and saying I think you should read them together, just because it packs even more of an informative punch, if you will, if you read them back to back. And then the last book that I read is one that I actually finished this morning, and that is The Private Life of Queen Victoria by Sarah Toole. And this is a very, very short book. I think it was maybe right over 100 pages or so, and the cover's not loading, so I'm not even going to try to show that. But this is a very short book that was recommended to me actually on my Amazon store feed. Oh, never mind, the cover loaded. There it is. Sort of a very crowded cover there. I'm not quite sure how I feel about the font down there at the bottom. This is a book that was recommended to me on Amazon when I was going onto the store to look for a different ebook, and it caught my eye and I clicked on it, and it was 99 cents, so I went ahead and bought it. I was not impressed with this one, certainly not as impressed as I was with Victoria by Jane Ridley, part of the Penguin Monarch series. This sort of felt to me to be the opposite in quality to Jane Ridley's. It's about the same length. It's a little bit shorter, and it's sort of a private, the personal life of Queen Victoria, and so it doesn't touch on any of her life really as queen, and it doesn't really touch on any of the sort of the political side of her life, which is fine because it's a personal history. But I felt that even with it being a personal history, it was incredibly disjointed, and it was I just felt that the writing itself was a little clunky. It didn't really read smooth for me, so I really wouldn't recommend this one, even though it is another sort of brief overview biography of Queen Victoria. It didn't seem to have the quality of the Penguin Monarch series, which are all sort of shorter books, but their length is not sort of the length is inhibiting the quality, whereas in this case I feel that the length was inhibiting the quality. If it could have been a little bit longer, I think it would have been better. I do think that there were just sort of some flaws with sort of the grab factor of the writing. It seemed to really not reach out and grab me. It was fairly bland, pretty boring, pretty factual. I do like my histories, obviously, to be factual and to be correct, but I also do want there to also be sort of an entertainment value. I read to learn, I also read to be entertained, so I want both of those aspects to be present in the reading process. And for this one, it was mainly just the information that was coming across. And personally, for me, it wasn't any new information, so it wasn't very interesting. So it was really just sort of a bit of a blander reading experience. The only good thing is it was very short, so it didn't take me very long to get through it. So it's not really much wasted time. But it was enough for me to sort of cross this one off of the list of Victoria books, but then also to cross it off of the list of books that I really don't need to recommend to anyone. There are plenty of different titles that I would recommend way before recommending this one. And that is the final of the books from last week. I'm actually currently in between books at the moment after finishing that one this morning. I don't have any books currently going on. So my plan is to go to my local library this afternoon and hopefully get a couple of Elizabeth I biographies that I have on my TBR. I believe one is by Anne Somerset. I hope that is correct. I know her last name is Somerset, and I'm 90% sure her first name is Anne. But I'm wanting to pick up a couple Queen Elizabeth I biographies, and then depending on what I'm able to find, make sort of Queen Elizabeth I and or more Tudor focused reading, my reading plans for this next week. So if I'm able to find anything good, I will be mentioning it in a video soon. But that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Feel free to leave a comment down below if you would like, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now, and happy reading.